But Hank, I always like these behind the scenes stories because people don't know what is
Yeah.
going on in the recruitment of some of these guys. So maybe pick out a couple of your favorite nuggets from this year's recruiting stories.
Yeah, there's a handful of them. I think with the guys they got, I did a lot of the offensive guys in the feature we did, and I think Ryan Wingo is one of the most intriguing ones. I think just from there was a lot of things that like were working, I guess, against Texas there in terms of Missouri kind of having this resurgence as a program. They obviously have some NIL resources that they've been exercising, and they're featuring high flying offense and able to spread the ball around, and I think that really caught his eye. And with Texas, I think the big thing with him was Chris Jackson. That was someone asked on our board, like, would Ryan Wingo have even come to Texas if it wasn't for Chris Jackson? And that's a good question. I'm not sure. I think obviously you look at Sark, you look at the offense, you look at the way he gets his receivers involved, but I think Ryan Wingo really did like the idea of playing for Chris Jackson, the NFL experience. He talked about Chris Jackson. Wingo was the first call he made, once he got to the staff from the Jaguars in early 2023. So I think that connection ran really deep there. I think, guys like Tashard Choice were involved there at the end, making sure that they could, seal the deal and get him to come to Texas. Cause I think Mizzou really was legitimately close. The whole thing was he committed, he committed during that Wyoming game, silently committed. And then things kind of went quiet for a while. There was no decision date set. And Mizzou kind of crept back in and made it kind of interesting. And, in the end, they picked Texas. I think the family wanted him to go to Texas. I think his brother, who was a big part of his recruitment, wanted him to go to Texas. And I think, Texas did a really good job of showing that, they checked all the boxes for him. And another thing interesting with Wingo is, these alpha wide receivers, they kind of want to be the guy in the class. But I talked to him at the All-American Bowl after he'd already signed and everything. And I was asking him, are you recruiting anybody? Like, are there any guys you're talking to try to get you to come to Texas with you? And he mentioned Aaron Butler. He said Aaron Butler actually hit him up kind of later in the fall, I guess, saying he was having doubts about Colorado. And Wingo said he started calling him 2 or 3 times a day and just pumping up Texas, trying to get him to come. And obviously that worked out well once he officially got that offer. But, I think that was one of the recruitments that was really kind of wild to finish. Jarrett Gibson, I think Florida and Miami late were a lot more involved than maybe we thought. We knew they were involved, but I think quietly behind the scenes, Florida was a school to watch. Miami made a really late press as well. Florida was not, I don't want to say begging him to flip, but they really, really wanted to keep him home. And, I think he just felt really good about, playing for Tashard Choice. I think he felt really good about, seeing, CJ Baxter have success as a freshman and coming from the state of Florida. I think that played a big role, and I think Texas just stayed on him really well. So those are some. There's just so many guys. I think my portion was like 5,000 words, so it's like I'm still kind of like recovering from like the writing it all. But it was fascinating, kind of to how everything unfolded.
Well, Wingo, like Missouri, obviously they went all in this year because they had a good year, so they really want to capitalize on the momentum. Talk about what you were hearing from the Missouri side of it in terms of, they're trying to get their NIL collective really going and try to seize on this 2023 season they had.
Yeah, I think you got to be really disappointed if you're Missouri that they went all in on him. Like obviously NIL it's not used as an inducement. That can't be. But these kids have representation. Like they're talking like they have people talking to people. Like there's NIL is discussed. It's not from the coaches always, but it's discussed. And I think it was very clear that he was a big factor in their NIL, I guess, budget for the 2024 class. And, to not be able to get him, in a year where you have Luther Burden, Luther Burden, perform the way he is, and, in the success they had, beating Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, that's kind of got to be a little demoralizing, but maybe they just needed a couple more years of, this trajectory before they're able to, secure multiple big fish in one cycle. I guess they still got the 5-star defensive lineman from over Oklahoma, but he was their guy. And, I do think they made it interesting, that, that signing day morning, everyone, his letter of intent wasn't in, and everyone was, of course, starting to kind of panic. But he told us, and, I kind of, I do believe him. The way he was telling me the story is, he said he was up until 3 a.m. playing Madden the night before, and he just slept in until 10, and he woke up and his phone was blowing up. I asked him, I was like, was Texas nervous? And he was like, he's like, I think maybe a little bit, but, I hope they weren't. I wasn't trying to make them nervous. I just, slept in. So, yeah, I think they certainly were making a last ditch effort to try to flip him. But I think once he committed, he was pretty set, on everything. And I did an interview with him in San Antonio, and I asked him, outside of just football, just coming to Texas, what attracted you to the program? And he kind of was talking about, it's a legacy opportunity. Texas is not necessarily rebranding, but in a way they are going into the SEC. They're taking this new step. And he said, to be part of that, people are going to remember that forever. So I thought that was kind of cool that he thought kind of deeper about, going to a program that's, making that change.
Well, and real quick, for a young guy like Ryan Wingo, how much does having a guy like Arch Manning waiting to take over for Quinn Ewers matter?
Yeah, I think that was a big deal. I think they spent a lot of time together on the official visit back in the summer. That's when Texas really kind of started to trend for him. I think, again, Texas hasn't had an issue with, QB depth or, who's going to be the quarterback. That hasn't been an issue for them in the last few years. And it doesn't look like it's going to be for a little while longer if they continue to play the way they are. And, with Sark there. But, I think that was a big deal for him. Cause you're either going to catch passes from Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning. And, that's probably going to make you look pretty good. Missouri, obviously they have their guys too, but, I think Ewers is, a top 2 returning quarterback in 2024 in the country. I think that's certainly an appealing thing. And then to have, Manning's probably top 10 quarterback in the country too, if he had to play. But, I think that was definitely a factor for him too. Yeah.
Yeah. Hank, talk a little bit about Colin Simmons. Chip and I discussed him and just the motor that he has coming in from Duncanville, the fact that he has championship DNA, being a 2-time state champion, and, just him being a potential star. I've been seeing rumors on social media talking about he might have gained 20 pounds of muscle. I don't know how credible those are. I'll let you tell us. But I feel like just with his personality, I think that's infectious, and obviously his talent and his upside is through the roof.
Yeah, I think, if you look at in terms of offensive targets in 2024, I think, out of high school, I think Wingo was your guy on offense, and I think Colin Simmons was your guy on defense. You can make the argument for, Kobe Black or Xavier Filsaime, but I think Colin Simmons was like the guy you had to get. In a class that you need edge rushers, you need to kind of establish yourself there. You need to affect the quarterback. When you have a guy like that 2.5 hours away in Duncanville, you got to keep him home. And they made sure of, making it known he was a priority. And, the thing that surprised me the most about his recruitment is, he committed in August and that was it. He was part of the class. A lot of these elite recruits, you commit and then it's like, okay, now it's time to, keep an eye on where he visits. Is he still going to take an official visit to LSU? Who's going to try to flip him? How solid is he all year? And I think it certainly helped Texas that they played so well all year. But I think he was also, very set on that decision. I think he was really excited about playing in this defense and, staying home. Obviously, he's close to his family, which is really important to him. And, again, kind of establishing, that defensive culture they want to, put in place there. So, just a freak edge rusher. I think Sark said, he said on a few guys, put him in a lab, and like spit out an edge rusher. That's Colin Simmons. He said he's certainly an NFL guy. So, I think I think he's a guy that's going to play sooner rather than later once he the season starts, and maybe like kind of an Anthony Hill type trajectory. Obviously, different positions, but a guy that could maybe we see in little spurts here early, and then kind of establishes himself in playing more minutes as the season goes on.
Any other stories from the behind the scenes?
Yeah,
Even
it's all blurred when we look my email. So I'm trying to remember Ryan Williams, guys that didn't go to Texas, I guess. That was one that kind of stuck out to me. Obviously, I don't think he was ever going to come to Texas. I think maybe there was a slight chance had he stayed in the class of 2025, but I really, maybe he was always set on Alabama, even, decommitting and committing back 2 weeks later under Kalen DeBoer, but, all fall we were hearing that, like, he was talking to Texas a lot. Like he was legitimately interested. I just, it was hard to see. I think if he had flipped, it would have been Auburn. He visited there more than anywhere. His dad played there. So, that was one that was kind of interesting to track. Elijah Lofton, who's a tight end that signed with Miami out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. That was one. Blair Angulo on 24/7 Sports reported that he was set to visit Texas. I think it was for the Kansas State game. And that was quickly shut down. We haven't gotten confirmation on the Miami end, but I think Miami made a phone call and was like, yeah, this isn't happening. You're not visiting Texas. So that was one. Maybe that would have been more interesting had he made that visit. But a guy Texas was recruiting pretty heavily that went the other way, stayed with Miami. I think the Bishop Gorman ties with Brevin Jordan, I think that helped because obviously Brevin went to Miami. Now he's obviously having success in the NFL. So Elijah Lofton was another one. Jordan Ross, I think the 5-star edge rusher from Alabama. He, runner up. Texas was his runner up. I think if it wasn't Tennessee, he was going to go to Texas. He even, said that. And that was a guy Texas liked a lot. Other elite edge rusher. I mean, maybe he's looking at Colin Simmons and he's thinking, I'll go to Tennessee instead. But he likes Texas a lot. He took his official visit in the summer. So he was another one. Dalen Evans, that one was kind of crazy. The defensive lineman that was committed to A&M from Longview. He told me on Friday, or was it Thursday night or Friday morning of the early signing period, not to like put him on blast or anything. I think he was legitimately thinking about it, but he was like, I think Texas is the pick. And then obviously he stuck with Texas A&M and signed with the Aggies on I think it was Friday night right before the signing period ended. So that was kind of a wild, last 48 hours with covering Dalen Evans. So there's a bunch of them. I'm really excited, for this 2025 class, just because, Jordan Scruggs and I started in June covering Texas at least. And so, we weren't as embedded, I guess, with these guys. You get to know them, over the summer and as much as you can. But, now that we've, been around these 2025 kids, probably for about, the last year, almost a year, getting to know them. And then obviously we'll have this whole year. I think we'll have some pretty good stories to share next February when we run this again.
Yeah, you Horns 24/7 guys. Y'all been on y'all shit lately. Hank, Chip, Scruggs, Jeff, E. Henry, man. Y'all been on y'all's game. I've been very impressed. But Hank, let me ask you this, because you've talked to Isaiah Bond's mom in recent days. Talk about just what that was like, the type of family Isaiah Bond comes from. I know Longhorn fans are excited for him transferring from Alabama with the speed and upside that he has. Talk about that discussion a little bit.
Yeah. I've known the Bond since, the 2021 cycle. I got to know his mom when I was covering Alabama. Obviously, he went to Alabama. So, that was a recruit we were following closely. He was actually committed to Florida early on. He was recruited as a cornerback by Alabama, or by a lot of schools early. And then after that summer, everyone kind of was like, I think this kid's a wide receiver. And, now we're seeing everyone was correct in that assessment. But no, his mom is awesome. I really enjoy, talking to her, getting to know her. But, I asked her kind of, because it all happened so quickly. He entered the portal after Saban retired, was on campus that weekend at Texas. And, I think they kind of just leaned on the fact that, Texas did recruit him really heavily out of high school. They made a run at him in the class of 2022 for Sark's first, full cycle. And obviously, they saw Texas firsthand when Texas played Alabama. They were watching, they saw what they were able to do with the receivers. I think, they kind of saw the Adonai Mitchell, trajectory, how he had so much success and moving on to Texas after playing in the SEC or playing at Georgia. And so I think they really liked that. They were talking about, Chris Jackson, Sark sold them on the vision to use him and how they wanted to use him in the offense and, just get him the ball in space and let him do his thing. And so that really attracted to them. I thought it was interesting. I got a kid banging on the door. I don't know if y'all can hear that. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go do my YouTube. Are you good? And he's like, yeah, I'm good. 2 minutes in, banging on the door.
Dad.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
but,
yeah.
Anyway, he
let me. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, but yeah, basically, I asked, did Bama make him try to, ask you to stay, like obviously, like to play in DeBoer's offense, and she said, and I think Isaiah said something else, but his mom said, she never heard from Kalen DeBoer. But she did hear from the new Alabama general manager. I forgot what his name is. I think it's Courtney Morgan, I think. So, you can't really, it happened so quick, they didn't even, by the time he was in the portal, like they hadn't even brought Kalen DeBoer in yet. So it's like, he was kind of working, with his hands tied from his back. Isaiah Bond was already on campus at Texas when they were announcing Kalen DeBoer as head coach, and he was committed the next day. So, you can't really fault Alabama. Obviously they would have loved to keep him, but she did say, it's no surprise, but, had Saban stayed, Isaiah Bond would have stayed at Alabama. That's not a shock. But, just a really good discussion. She said he's really enjoying it already. He's adjusting really well to be at the Texas life. And, I think he's going to be fun to watch this fall. And someone was asking in our story thread or something, we were talking about wide receivers, and they're talking about, getting all these guys involved. They have so many talented guys. And Sark even said last week at that press conference, he was like, that's kind of the fun thing now we have to figure out. Like, he's like, we got these guys, now we got to figure out like how we're going to use them all. And so I think we'll certainly see like a lot more rotation. And we'll see, a lot. It's not going to be kind of the three-headed monster we saw this year. I think we'll see a lot of these guys, get more reps.
Hank, do you have a favorite player in that 2024 class, like a guy not necessarily like instant impact, but a guy you think is going to develop into a surefire player?
Yeah, I'm really excited. The two guys, one on offense, one on defense. Jordan Washington, the 3-star tight end from Langham Creek. I think he's going to be legit. I think he's a guy that can like. Awesome size, can stretch the field. He can block, but I don't think he's gonna be, he's not really an inline guy. I think he's a guy that is gonna be a passing threat. And I think he's gonna be an important piece of this offense, after this year. I think tight end in the class of 2025 is a really important position. You might lose 3 guys after this season, and then, Jordan Washington's kind of your only, passing tight end threat. So I think he's gonna be a guy that develops into a special player. On offense, and then on defense, a guy that nobody really talks about, but Alex January, Texas legacy, a guy that played at Duncanville like Colin Simmons. He wasn't, asked to, do a ton. His role wasn't, I guess, as glamorous on the defensive line where he was playing. But a guy that, and I think Sark mentioned this too, played baseball every spring until this past year. So he hasn't really been in a full offseason, program yet focused on football outside of this past spring. And so, on campus now already, going to get, in football shape, stay in football shape, go through spring practices and, develop his body. And, again, football genes. His dad played at Texas, played linebacker. So I think he's a guy that could, in a few years, we're quietly being like, oh man, this kid was really good. He was underrated or underranked in high school.
Have you even like in that 2025 group, is there a player that you're like, oh man, this is a must get for Texas?
Yeah. I think it's, DeCorian Moore is really, really good. It's kind of like, you sign all these really talented wide receivers. It's not a huge need in 2025, but I think he's a guy, I think you would really want to flip in this class from LSU. I think they have a good chance to flip him. So we'll see. I'm trying to think who else in 2025. I think tight end obviously is going to be a really important position. They've got some good guys. Obviously, they already have Winston committed, but a guy like Nick Townsend out of Decaney, he's a really talented tight end prospect that they like a lot. I'm trying to think anybody else. I mean, you got to hit on these offensive linemen. I think, Michael Fasusi, the 5-star tackle from the DFW, he's a guy that, you have all this, Fasusi, Ty Haywood, Lamont Rogers, they really like the brothers at Cedar Hill, the interior guys. There's a ton of offensive line talent in the state of Texas in 2025. They might not even have to leave the state to fill up the class. There's some guys they like out of state, but I think that they'll get most of their guys from within the state of Texas. What's another? It's interesting. I think quarterback it's going to be an interesting position to watch unfold in 2025. You have KJ Lacey, but again, assuming, I think we're all pretty sure Quinn Ewers is going to go to the NFL after this next season. You're going to be left with Arch Manning and Trey Owens. Like, those are your quarterbacks. I don't think anyone's comfortable with 2 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster to go into a season with. So, you have Lacey. Is it a 2 quarterback class? I think that's a fair question and maybe something we see them do. And, Lacey's still taking visits. So, I think they're probably still actively recruiting the quarterback position. So, we'll see. I think Lacey's solid, but again, if you're going to still look around, you can't be upset if the program you're committed to is still looking around too, just to, be safe and, have those backup options. So yeah, certainly some interesting storylines to track this cycle.
Yeah.